The soft music continues. Alex walks through the garden, touching the leaves and petals. The camera follows his movements, showing his care and dedication. The lighting is natural, highlighting the beauty of the place. Alex's voice becomes a bit more intimate, as if he's sharing a secret. Alex, my passion for gardening started a few years ago. I live in a quiet neighborhood, but the landscape was a bit monotonous. Green lawns, identical houses. Nothing wrong with that, but I missed a touch of color, of life. So, I started. First, a small flower bed. Then, a little more. Over time, my garden became my refuge. I spent hours here, planting, watering, watching each flower bloom. And it wasn't just about the flowers, it was about the process. The soil in my hands, the sun on my face. With each new flower that bloomed, I felt immense joy. People who passed by on the street used to stop. Some smiled, others took pictures. I heard comments like, "Your garden is so beautiful," or "This really brightens our day." It was gratifying. I felt like I wasn't just creating beauty for myself, but for everyone who passed by. Little did I know that not everyone shared that feeling. Especially, Mr. Miller, the president of the neighborhood association. The music changes to a more tense and mysterious tone. The scene cuts to an image of a letter being delivered to the mailbox. Alex picks it up, the camera focusing on the expression of confusion on his face. He opens the letter and reads it, his expression changing from confusion to disbelief and finally, indignation. The camera zooms in on the letter, showing the official letterhead of the association and the word "fine" in large letters. Alex, voiceover, with a tone of surprise, "One day, while coming home, I found a piece of mail in my mailbox. It was an official envelope from the neighborhood association. I opened it, expecting maybe a notice about a meeting or something similar. What I found left me speechless. A fine. A fine. Of 500 reis. The reason? Violation of the community's landscaping code. I read it again. And again. The accusation was that my flowers, my garden, did not follow the uniform standard of the neighborhood. That they, in some way, were disrupting the aesthetics of the place. I was perplexed. It was the most absurd thing I had ever heard. How could a garden full of life and beauty be a violation? And the most shocking part, the letter was signed by Mr. Miller himself. The one who always greeted me in a formal way, but who now seemed to have a hidden agenda. Alex is sitting at his desk, with the fine in front of him. He flips through a gardening book, as if he's looking for answers. The camera focuses on his thoughtful face. The music is now an investigative and reflective melody. Alex, I tried to understand. What motivated this fine? Did the neighborhood association really have the power to dictate what I could or couldn't plant in my own backyard? I started to research the rules, the bylaws. I found that, yes, there was a landscaping code, but it was vague. It talked about maintaining order, about not letting weeds grow, and about removing dead plants. Nothing, absolutely nothing, about prohibiting flowers or gardens that weren't standardized. It was clear. The fine had no legal basis. It was an attempt at intimidation, a form of control. But why? I started to suspect something more personal. Maybe Mr. Miller, with his rigid ways and his obsession with order, saw my garden as an affront to his authority. A silent rebellion. After all, flowers are the pure manifestation of freedom, of diversity. And that, for someone who seeks absolute control, can be a threat. Alex is sitting at his desk, with the fine in front of him. He flips through a gardening book, as if he's looking for answers. The camera focuses on his thoughtful face. The music is now an investigative and reflective melody. Alex, I tried to understand. What motivated this fine? Did the neighborhood as? Look. The scene cuts to him putting on more formal clothes, as if he's preparing for an important meeting. He holds the fine letter, crumpling it slightly. The camera follows him as he walks towards Mr. Miller's house. Alex, I had two options. Ignore the fine and hope they would give up, or pay and give in to the absurdity. But I'm not one to give up. And I knew that if I paid, I would be legitimizing their mistake, and maybe, setting a precedent for other neighbors to also be controlled. I decided to go all the way. And my response would not be a letter, an email, or a phone call. It would be personal. I got dressed and went to Mr. Miller's house. I knew he would receive me coldly, but I had a plan. I wasn't there to argue, I was there to resolve. When he opened the door, his expression was one of surprise, almost irritation. "Mr. Miller," I said, "I've come here to talk about this fine you sent me." He invited me in, visibly uncomfortable, seen inside Mr. Miller's house. The environment is sterile, clean, and organized, in total contrast to Alex's garden. Mr. Miller is sitting in an armchair, with an austere expression. Alex sits in a chair in front of him. The tension is palpable. The music is minimalist, just a few chords to highlight the gravity of the moment. "Alex, Mr. Miller, I read the fine letter and the association's bylaws. I didn't find any clause that prohibits what I do. My garden is not a violation. It's an expression of art and beauty." Mr. Miller, with a firm voice, replied, "We have a code. Uniformity is important for property values. Your garden stands out. It's an exception that needs to be corrected." I realized that the issue wasn't about the legality of the fine, but about his worldview. He saw difference as something negative, something that needed to be standardized. That's when I decided to change my tactic. I wouldn't argue about the fine anymore. I would talk about something much bigger. "Mr. Miller, do you remember Mrs. Helen, the lady who lives on the corner?" He shook his head, confused. "She told me that the garden reminded her of her mother's backyard. She has Alzheimer's and these moments of clarity are rare and precious. Do you remember the boy who always passes by with his mother, Lucas? He told me he wanted to be a gardener because of my flowers." Mr. Miller's expression began to soften. For the first time, he didn't look like the president of the association, but a man listening to a story. The music becomes emotional, with a tone of redemption. Alex leans forward, his voice filled with emotion and sincerity. He is no longer just talking, he is making Mr. Miller feel the impact of his actions. The camera focuses on Mr. Miller's eyes, which are slightly moist. "Alex, my garden isn't just a garden, Mr. Miller. It's a point of connection. It's a source of joy for Mrs. Helen, of inspiration for Lucas, and of pride for me. It brings people together. Beauty should not be seen as a threat, but as a gift. It doesn't devalue houses, it enriches our community. Do you think a fine, or uniformity, can be more valuable than the joy and hope that my garden brings?" Mr. Miller was silent. He seemed to be processing every word. His facade as a rigid man was crumbling. He picked up the fine letter, looked at it for a few seconds, and without saying a word, tore it up. He looked at me and, with a choked voice, said, "Thank you for making me see this, Alex." Alex and Mr. Miller are in front of the house, greeting each other. The music returns to being calm and inspiring. The scene cuts to Alex back in his garden, smiling at the camera, with a feeling of peace and victory. He speaks directly to the audience, inviting them to be part of this transformation. "Alex, I came home with a feeling of victory. Not because I had avoided a fine, but because I had planted a seed of change. My response wasn't about the law, but about humanity. About what really matters." From that day on, my relationship with Mr. Miller changed completely. He became one of my biggest admirers. He even asked me for gardening tips. And the most incredible thing, the neighborhood association revised the landscaping code. They added a clause encouraging residents to create unique and personal gardens. My garden was no longer an anomaly. It was an example. And that brings me to the main point of this story. We have an immense power, a power of transformation. Our response to control, to imposition, doesn't have to be one of revolt. It can be one of beauty, of love, of empathy. Your passion, your individuality, what makes you unique, should not be hidden. It should be shared. It can inspire, unite, and in the end, change the world around you, one garden at a time. Alex is back in the garden, with his hands in the soil, planting a new flower. The camera zooms in on his hands. The music is uplifting. The protagonist ends the video with a rhetorical question and a direct invitation. Alex, my story with the Neighborhood Association president taught me that, sometimes, the best way to fight is not with harsh words, but with beautiful examples. And your story? What do you have in your life that might be seen as different or out of the ordinary, but that brings joy to you and the people around you? Tell me in the comments. I would love to know. And if you liked this story and believe in the power of beauty to transform the world, click the like button and